All right, hello, viewer slash listeners, possibly plural, possibly singular, possibly not at all. But hello, and welcome to another episode of the Magic Morning Wood. As always, I'm Ron, or as it says here, Ron is 7UT. So I'm not sure what happened there. And Here, let's try that again. There we go. Okay, good, Ron. And with me, as always, is.
Clive, do you want me to cut that out, or is that staying in?
I don't know that that was the password to your room, so it's up to you.
Yeah, it's only half of it though, I think, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
We should be. Plus, I don't know what anyone. It's not as if anyone can get in my room and like
Yeah, yeah.
vandalize it
I
or
just
something.
realized that I put the password, I guess, in the
Right. Well, there
wrong
we go.
spot.
Let's see if any
Anyone joins
exciting
us. But yeah,
happening.
because they don't have the meeting room number, so anyway, so yeah, welcome. And where we talk about movies. Isn't that right, Clive?
That is right, Ron. You're not wrong so far. Carry on. You're good.
Okay. All right. I'm doing okay so far. And how's it going, Clive?
Um. Well, let me tell you something, Ron. It's going
Uh-oh.
well.
Uh-oh.
It's going well.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
How about you?
We got an adverb. Okay, it is going swimmingly.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I try to keep it
This
verb.
is the
Okay.
new. This we can work with this. This is an
Yeah.
exciting new
Is this
part.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
new segment. We can like
right.
we should like a sting for it and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
how are you, clap and run? Bam. Yeah,
No need to. There's no
like,
need to go over the top now.
okay. Anyway, so where are we? Oh yes, right. We're doing a podcast. And we are talking about let's see, we're doing our loose connective tissue. Kind of like that.
Yeah. It.
Uh
The older you get, it's unavoidable, right? That loose
yeah,
connective tissue just lets it
yeah,
get
that kind of like in my knee. That
right.
loose connective tissue, yeah. Um and yeah, last movie we talked was Slapshot,
Mm.
which was the classic um Paul Newman, George Roy Hill, ice hockey movie.
Not
And I
not
decided,
not to be confused with the documentary that was made about me, Slap Head.
right. Or not to be confused with the second half of this podcast, which is slap your face. I don't know. I don't know. It's been a long day. Never
It's the
mind.
end of the day. Yes. Yeah. We don't
I'm
normally
reaching.
talk this late.
I'm reaching. All right. Um, yeah. So anyway,
That's enough hilarious comedy, Ron. And let's get on to the hard movie talk.
And that's why we're here. These are the jokes, kids. All right. So, yeah, so I decided to stay with George Roy Hill, the director, and I chose the 1970 movie Slaughterhouse-Five.
Right. Or Schachthof Ulf in German,
Oh,
right?
right, yes. So tough. Foof, foof. I like saying foof.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
It's fun that five is foof. Foof. It's like you're kind of like you've gotten like upset with someone like foof. And so
What is it, Ulf?
I think it's foof. I think FUNF is is five in German.
That's definitely one of the numbers. You might be right, but in fact, you sound right. But for some reason, I wrote down. Why did I write down Ulf then? What's how's it?
That's
How's it start? Ich nie san. No,
no, I can't. Yeah, I have no idea.
I used to know it 1 to 10 in German, but
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't know.
on.
I know French. Un, deux, trois. Right, I know that one. Uh, and then uno, dos,
Carry on.
tres. I know Spanish.
It's another exciting new part
Yeah,
of the show. We
yeah,
can do different numbers every week.
yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, foof. Here we are, Slaughterhouse-Five. Written by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. based on his novel and
Well, it's not
screenplay by
written by him, though, is it? It's written by.
please don't interrupt me. Screenplay by Stephen Geller. And and let's see, the starring Michael Sachs, who went on to do pretty much nothing else after this. Yeah.
Well, he's in some things.
Is he?
He's in Sugarland Express, the early
Okay.
Spielberg feature,
Okay.
which is quite good actually.
Okay. I don't think I've ever seen that. So
He's
is that
in
the one with the they're all on roller skates?
No, it's the one with Goldie Hawn.
Oh, what's the Broadway musical when they're all on roller skates? Isn't that Sugarland Express? Is it ba
Xanadu?
is it a musical? Huh?
No. Are you thinking of Starlight Express?
Oh, Starlight Express. Okay. There we go.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. There's the connective tissue like in my knee, right?
Right. And he was in Split Image, and he's in the first Amityville horror. So yeah, but I know what you mean. He's one of those names that yeah, it doesn't necessarily conjure up.
Yeah.
You're like Michael Sachs, who's that?
Yeah.
Uh, but he
Anyway, so him and Ron Liebman, who
Mhm.
plays Paul Lazzaro, and yeah, and I don't know. Oh, and Eugene Roche, who I know from Soap, the that sitcom Soap.
Yeah, he has an important role in this.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know anyone else that is.
Perry King, from The Possession of Joel Delaney. Valerie Perrine, of course, in her debut as
Okay.
Mother Montana.
Okay, yeah,
Sorrel Brook, Boss Hogg himself from Dukes of Hazzard, is in it. Actually, we've
right.
never talked about this one. Were you a Dukes of Hazzard fan when you were a kid? Because I used to
Uh,
fucking love Dukes of Hazzard.
I was, but I yeah, like don't remember almost anything about the show at all. I mean, I remember, of course, Bo and Luke and Daisy and Boss Hogg. I remember those kind of ideas, and that they drove around in the car and they used to jump in through the window because the doors didn't open,
Generally,
and it was that that the generally the car with like that was like mildly racist
well, it has the Confederate flag on it.
Confederate flag,
I
right?
mean,
Yeah, so
that
so I
means
don't know if
different
it
things
was,
to different people, I guess.
yeah, I guess. But yeah, other than that, I don't remember what the show was about. But yeah, I did watch it when I was little.
Yeah,
So
I used to love it when I was a kid. The only two things I remember about it was the theme tune,
hmm,
"The Good Old Boys,"
boys
having some
gonna
fun.
do no harm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And of
Okay, I
course, the
remember that.
fact that they never fixed that fucking bridge, right? That bridge was
Uh,
down every episode. It seems they had to jump the
that
creek every
oh yeah,
single time.
yeah, there's a jump something, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
um,
Anyway, I was just curious if
was this was pre Dukes of Hazzard though, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Dukes of Hazzard was yeah, later on in the decade, end of the 70s it started,
Yeah.
I think. Quite a long running show. Because it was still on when we were kids, right? So
Right.
but
Yeah.
anyway, yes, so and yes, as you said, based on Kurt Vonnegut Jr.'s very infamous book, also based on his own real experiences,
Yeah.
the Second World War in Dresden.
His real experiences of time travel, right? So
That's right,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Kurt Vonnegut is an interesting. I mean, we'll talk about him obviously, but he's a. Are you? Because I'm a big Kurt Vonnegut fan. Anyway, are you a fan of Kurt Vonnegut or this novel? Or
To be honest, I've never read any Kurt Vonnegut, or I haven't read this novel. I think
oh,
I started to read it years ago, and then I think I got busy and I never finished it, and so never
okay.
got to it. And then, I mean, of course he's so famous, but I've just never been in my sort of like on my to read pile, so just never got
Yeah.
around to him.
Well,
So
that's interesting. That actually turns out to be quite good for this discussion because I'm going to be very curious as to how this film works for someone who has no familiarity with the source material. Um, I'm suspecting it might make a big difference, but we'll see. Um, yes, so yeah, Michael Sachs is so in the novel, Billy Pilgrim is our kind of Vonnegut surrogate character in a way,
right,
at least for the section where, yeah, captured Battle of the Bulge and taken to as prisoners of war to the city of Dresden, which is then, of course, bombed to smithereens by the Allies. One of those fascinating kind of wartime stories that I remember my first time my father telling me, because I think when you're a kid, right, it's all black and white, right? It's all
Mm.
good guys, bad guys stuff, right? But I
Sure.
remember my father sitting me down and telling me all about how horrendous the bombing of Dresden was. Mostly civilians, and I mean, bombed like in a way that is just excessive to the point of apparently there was so many firestorms. People were like being dragged into the flames, like trying
Mhm.
to run away. And so, yeah, some people consider it a massive a kind of war crime. And then, of course, there's a character in the film, isn't there, who's written a book about Dresden, who's talking about, oh, no, it was actually, people forget at the same time the Germans were dropping V2 rockets on London and all of that. And so that's all in there.
Yeah,
That would be
he's like the current deniers, like the COVID deniers and stuff.
well, this would be fascinating in and of itself in a way, but what's kind of fascinating about the more you learn about Kurt Vonnegut, the more you see interviews with him and stuff, he's one of the few people I can think of who's turned, who's actually addressed. He clearly has PTSD, right? He clearly has
Yeah, yeah.
from that experience, understandably. But somehow he's one of those few people who seems to have turned it into art in a way. Because you
Oh, you
spend
mean Kurt Vonnegut, not Billy Pilgrim? I thought like both do, right? You're,
well,
you're talking about Kurt though.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah, because
Okay.
So and because if you ever see interviews with them and stuff, it only takes you a few minutes to realize, oh yeah, this guy's like really cracked, like deep down you can tell something has just kind of broken somehow. But rather than totally give into it, he's kind of managed to. I don't know how he did it, but he managed
Sublimated a bit.
he managed to make himself just keep on going, but also keep on working and reflecting on it. But
Mhm.
I find him an endlessly fascinating character, and yes, and the book is fascinating, but also he throws in all these other things as well, right? So it's also it's a it he's unstuck in time, right? That's the phrase.
Right.
He's sat down
Mhm.
at his typewriter. He's an old man now, the Billy Pilgrim character, who is basically a kind of Vonnegut surrogate, and he's flashing back on his life and well, not flashing back. He seems to actually be jumping around in time, right? And
Yeah.
he doesn't know if he's here, if he's there, if he's on the planet Tralfamador,
Mm.
hanging out with a naked Valerie Perrine.
Yeah.
And
The smoker.
yes, so it's I don't know beyond that. I kind of accidentally did the plot there. Sorry, you're supposed to do that, but
All
that
right.
is. Am I missing any? Really? I mean, that's that is the narrative, right? As it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of flips back and forth between him during the war and him and kind of like after the war and his life kind of after the war and also him on this planet in this alien zoo where these
Yes.
aliens are watching him and they're all like fascinated by him and you hear these voices of people of them watching him
Yeah.
and he's supposed to like procreate with Valerie Perrine while they watch, but then he keeps putting it on privacy mode or whatever it
Right.
is. Yeah.
Right. His relationship to science fiction is fascinating as well. I always thought like Slaughterhouse-Five is only marginally science fiction, I suppose, although it is
Mm.
kind of a time travel story. But I don't know. I never think of Kurt Vonnegut as a science fiction writer, even though he wrote a lot of science fiction.
Yeah.
I tend to think of him as a little bit outside of, I suppose,
Yeah.
sui generis, I
Well, it's
suppose.
not really, I guess, traditional science fiction or stereotypical science
No.
fiction. I mean, like I'm sure there could be a case made for this story that it wasn't time travel at all, but rather like an internal PTSD trip.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So that it's
Yeah.
that's like
No, he
his
clearly.
experience, his internal experiences rather than an actual
Yes.
time, right? So
What I like about him though is sometimes people who kind of use science fiction as as a form to talk about other things. They kind of have a slightly snooty kind of looking like down their nose attitude, etc. In the same way, nowadays there's a lot of what's termed, I hate this term, but horror films which are called elevated horror, right? Or it's elevated horror. I hate this fucking phrase. It just means that they
What is it?
they want to talk about other things, but they use, the framework. It's a very
Mm.
condescending attitude. What I like about Kurt Vonnegut is I have the feeling he genuinely really likes science fiction, and he understands how to use it, and he understands the trappings of it, and he knows how to parody it as well. But I think
Yeah,
he does genuinely seem to have like a fondness for science fiction tropes, and
yeah, yeah,
a bit like William S. Burroughs has that going on as well, actually.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Um,
or what's the Hunter S. Thompson? Wouldn't he have the kind of same kind of thing?
I don't think Hunter S. Thompson's dipped into science fiction that much, as far as I know.
Uh,
Yeah, so no,
oh no.
yes, yeah, uh, but nice try.
Sure.
Yeah, got a score by Glenn Gould, right, doing the music of Bach. Um, yes. So, um, how did you get on with Slaughterhouse-Five then, Ron? Bearing in mind that you didn't know, because you haven't read the novel, so you were kind of going in. You said you started to, so you had an idea what it was about, but more or less, you're not.
Yeah, to be honest, I had no memory of it because I know it's so famous,
Hmm.
but I actually really had no idea what it was about or what the framework was or even what genre it was in. I thought it was just sort of
Okay.
yeah, so I didn't know really anything. Um,
I should
no.
say as well, actually, thank you for, because I'd never seen this before either, even though
Oh, really?
I love the book. I've
Huh.
always been really trepidatious about watching this film. I've always been, I don't know, something's always stopped me. I've had copies for years, but then
No.
it pushed me into watching it. And yes, I'll get to that. I thank you for it because, yeah, I needed the little push. I don't know why. I was suspicious of it for some reason.
No. Hmm. Um, the yeah, I don't know. It was I mean, I didn't really know much going in, but I was sort of like reading like synopses as I was watching it, like kind of if that makes sense, kind of at the same time. I sort of got a basic idea of what was happening as I was watching it because I think otherwise I would have been kind of lost, I think, to be honest. But yeah, I agree. I thought uh it was an interesting movie, not having the benefit of the source material, but I thought it was yeah, it was yeah, I don't even know how to even put
It's a
this into
tough
words.
one, isn't it? It's a tough
Yeah,
one.
because I mean, I almost like didn't buy it as I was kind of said it earlier. I didn't almost didn't buy it as a science fiction. It was almost like it was a very to me almost entirely about PTSD, but
Hmm.
from a person who believed he was traveling through time. But it was I
As a
you know what I
coping
mean?
mechanism, I
Yeah,
suppose.
it was more of a coping mechanism, or just like the fact that when you have PTSD or when you're like kind of traumatized, any trauma, you can't help but re-experience those things in the past or keep going back and so that
Right.
and escaping and finding some sort of escapism. So my understanding was that it's like him in the post-war time who
Hmm.
keeps going back there, even though
Right.
like
Against his will.
he,
Yeah.
he's finding triggers that kind of remind him of things that he kept going through, and he's re-experiencing them in real time. And to him, it feels like he's time traveling, but
Yes.
um, you know, I'm sure it's just like, and then the alien thing is like a form of escapism or trying to, I mean, like he earlier in the movie he sees like what is it, his son or something finds like a magazine with that girl in it or something like
Yes.
the
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And so it's almost like like I don't know, it's probably a bad analogy, but like the Usual Suspects Kaiser Sose stuff where like you're taking little bits of stuff and putting it together and then making
Right, right. It's
you know,
his
like a
happy place, isn't it, as well?
yeah, making a reality out of it. So it's sort of like he's sort of there's almost like hints dropped that he's taking this, and then he's creating this new reality kind of in his head to
Right.
escape from his kind of modern torment
Yeah.
or like current torment, right? Um, so yeah, it was almost like even though I had this kind of structural framework of time travel and stuff, that it never struck me as being science fictiony, you know. So it was more war than it was anything, right?
Right.
So
Yes. I think
yeah.
the science fiction stuff is a little stronger in the novel, which I know is has a very well respected novel amongst veterans as well, right? Like a
Mm.
lot of veterans
Right,
kind of, oh yeah, you kind of nailed that
right,
feeling of yeah, being unstuck into
right.
really big. The one only thing missing from the novel is famous for having the phrase "and so it goes" every now and
So
again.
yeah, I heard that it's in the novel like 100 times or something, but
Yeah,
not in one
yeah.
at all. Yeah.
I suppose that's the only thing that so for me it's very easy as to like it's quite difficult to kind of articulate what it is about this film. And at first I wasn't into it at all. Like the first 30 minutes of this film, I was like, oh no, I was right all these years to not watch it. This isn't doing it for me. This is all wrong. And then I kind of it worked its magic on me, and I started to approach the film on its own level, if you see what I mean. And then
Huh.
I realized, oh, this is quite clever because actually this is really in keeping. I actually it is in keeping with the tone of the book, and it isn't. There's because the book itself as well is slightly different to because I think I was misremembering some of the Kurt Vonnegut's novels. They're a little bit the humor is slightly more absurdist and turned up. And I think Slaughterhouse-Five, actually come to think of it, it's toned down a little bit. And I think I was expecting a little bit more absurdist humor.
The book is turned down or the
Yeah, the
movie is
book
turned
is. Oh, the book both are, but the
there.
yeah, in comparison with other Vonnegut writings,
Right, right, okay.
I think they actually nailed it. So it's very easy for me. My take on it is actually, if you like the book, then you will like the film. I
Mm.
think they George Roy Hill really, and it took me a little while to figure it. And like it was me who had to do the hard work, not the film. And
Huh.
it's something to do with the casting of Michael Sachs in a way, actually, as well. Like the way he plays, like it's all very. I don't know. It's almost it's like deliberately. What's the word I'm looking for? It's very. There's something bland about the character and his family
Huh.
and the surroundings. And at first I thought, oh, this is just, but then I realized, oh, they're supposed to be like that, right? They're
Huh.
supposed to be a little bit bland and kind of cliched, and that's what they kind of and then because that's what he's seen the other side of, right? Through his experiences is like all his family and friends and living back at home and all that. Like they haven't seen the other side, right? Like they have
Right.
no idea, and
Mm.
can't he can't talk to anyone about it. He can't
Yeah.
relate to other people, which is, I think, what is the often the veterans' experience, right? Is you just can't talk to no one knows unless you meet other veterans, of course. But at the same time, you're like, I don't want to meet other veterans and fucking relive it, but I need to talk to someone, so you get to feel extremely isolated, right? Which is what I. There's a very good documentary about Kurt Vonnegut. It came out a few years ago, um, by a guy who directed lots of Curb Your Enthusiasm, actually. And
Okay.
it's a very good documentary, and you really get the sense of that, like how, in a way, even though he was this celebrated author and he went to talks and he had his family around him, and in some ways he had this very kind of he was kind of just isolated by his own experiences.
Right, right.
And I think that this film kind of nailed
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it
Very
was
impressed, very impressed by it.
yeah, I thought it was an interesting movie, and yeah, that was it was definitely a unique take on a kind of a well-worn subject. So I thought it was which of course has a lot to do with the book, I'm sure. Which it's sort of inspired me to hopefully pick up the book one of these days and actually finally watch it one of these days. But
Yeah, I think
we
you would. I think you'd get a lot out of it. Interestingly as well, at the same time this came out in March of '72, there was another Vonnegut thing based on Vonnegut's writings called Between Time and Timbuktu, was shown on TV. It was like a PBS kind of
oh, okay,
experimental kind of show, which was a original teleplay by Kurt Vonnegut, which had lots of bits from all of his different books and stuff.
right.
Um, and that's, as I was saying, some of Vonnegut's stuff typically is a little bit more absurdist in its tone. That film Between Time and Timbuktu, which is there's no good copy of it, but you can find it on like YouTube and Vimeo and stuff as well.
Right.
Um, and that's really interesting. It came out at almost exactly the same time, but on the small screen, and that's a really good adaptation as well. But it's quite different
Yeah.
from this. So it's interesting that they both came out at more or less the same time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was funny was somehow it's 1972, it's the early 70s, so there's a car chase in it. It's like they couldn't make an American movie in the early 70s without putting a car chase in there, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the
So,
other
so, so you're happy you finally watched it. You finally
yes,
got on.
yeah, that's what I mean. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for pushing me to watch it. The other thing I was wondering, I might be reading a bit too much about it, but the thing it reminded me a little bit as well was the casting of Michael Sachs. It feels very much like Matthew Modine in Full Metal Jacket.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that, man.
And I'm just wondering if it's just a coincidence or whether this film might have been an influence on it. Because the look and the attitude, and there's something there, right? There's something of Joker in
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I could see that definitely.
Um, yeah, I think that's about so interesting that you also kind of dug it as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. Definitely wasn't a slog, and um, I think I'm glad I read kind of like a little bit of a synopsis beforehand because I think I would have been like, what the fuck is this if I hadn't been a little bit prepared for it. So I think, yeah, I mean, when I said that I hadn't read the book, I hadn't read the book, but I wasn't completely like going in absolutely
Right,
blind because
right.
I had a feeling. I mean, my understanding of Vonnegut, even though I'm not familiar with his work that much, my impression of it is that he's usually quite maybe absurdist or difficult to kind
Yes.
of get into sometimes. So, which is not always my favorite genre. So I figured it was best that I kind of at least kind of prepped myself a little bit beforehand, which I'm kind of glad I did. So I think
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
no, because I was very curious as well how it would work, kind of without the safety net of knowing the book in a way.
yeah,
So it turns out that yeah, George Roy Hill did an even better job. I mean, yeah, we've talked a few now. That George Roy Hill could direct a picture, huh?
yeah. He's he definitely could not unlike the guy who did Terrifier, right?
Yes. Oh God, couldn't even go there. And so it goes. Okay, so my connection was via the screenwriter of Slapshot, Nancy Dowd, um, to another film that she wrote, except you wouldn't know it from the credits because she has a pseudonym in the credits. She took her name off the credits of this film. She's credited as Rob Morton.
Yeah.
The film is, ladies and gentlemen, The Fabulous States, which was mostly shot in 1980, but not released until 1982, and actually kind of barely released at all. A bit of a obscurity for many years, this one. Had you come across it at all by any chance, Ron?
No.
Okay, so this was one I think kind of from what I gather, kind of built up a bit of a cult following over the years from screenings on late night television, like it was on Night Flight and stuff like that. But yeah, not many people had a chance to see it, but the people who did see it were quite. It was quite influential in a lot of the Riot Girl bands and stuff like that.
Mm.
So yes, this one stars a very young Diane Lane. She's like 15 or something in this film, right?
Hmm.
She already
Yeah.
did some stuff. She started quite young. And she's Corinne Burns, right? Or as she now likes to be called, Third Degree Burns.
Right. Yeah.
Lead singer and manager, as she puts it, of the Fabulous Stains, right? Along with her two cousins, one of which is Laura Dern.
Turn. Yeah.
And the other one is Maureen Cantor, who wasn't in many things, but she was in Catherine Bigelow's movie The Loveless, for example. She's in that, which is a film that's kind of come up in the conversation a lot more recently, since that movie The Bike Riders came out, right? Because of the comparison between the two. And yeah, she's basically a no-hope teenager, dead mother, father out of the picture, growing up in somewhere in Pennsylvania, right? And yeah, they've got this band together, and they kind of luck out, I guess. They go along and they see a punk band, the Looters from the UK. Lead singer Ray Winston.
Yeah.
On in his career, he'd already starred in Scum in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was in a kind of a fun little film called That Summer as well. And I think this was his first crack at the US market, right, which didn't really work. And he went back and did a lot of television in the UK, and then of course later became much more famous. But I'm a big fan of Ray Winston, and his band is made up of two Sex Pistols and a member of the Clash, right?
Yeah.
Steve Jones on guitar, Paul Cook on drums, and Paul Simonon on bass. And they're on their American tour. And so the Stains kind of luck out, and they're on the tour with the Looters, but they're actually supporting a band called the Metal Corpses, right?
Right.
Who seem to be like, they're supposed to be an over the hill kind of, they're kind of like Alice Cooper or something like that.
I thought they were more Kiss, but because they had the face paint as a
Yeah.
yeah.
Lead singer.
And the lead guy was really, I think, supposed to be Gene Simmons, I think.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
he is, of course, it's Fee Bill of the Tubes, and they have White Punks on Dope fame. And I think the guitarist is from the Tubes as well, Vince Welnick, I think. So there's two actual members of the Tubes make up the what were they called again? The Metal Corpses.
Little corpses, yeah.
Yeah, and then they kind of they go on tour, and yes, and it's a very kind of down to earth kind of what touring must really be like, I suspect. Just
right, yeah.
bickering and arguing and getting on people's nerves. And the Stains slowly kind of managed to gain this reputation, almost like kind of feminist icons, I suppose, for young teenage girls who come along to the show and imitate them and their passion.
Also because Third Degree Burns, Diane Lane she's quite outspoken, and I think she has a couple like interviews like on TV, and I think she kind of like builds up this sort of fan base of extra like young feminists who want to kind of be like her. And
yeah, there's like a TV anchor as well who kind of supports them, right? Who kind of draws attention to them,
right?
And I have to be said, well, Diane Lane is really fucking good in this.
Yeah, 15. Yeah. So.
Yeah, she's quite quite.
Yeah. It's too bad. I think nothing came of her. So
yeah, she's and because yeah, apparently she was, she was pretty overwhelmed and terrified by the whole thing because she's on stage, and as well she's kind of uh, you know, dressed in very revealing clothing and stuff, which made her kind of feel a bit uncomfortable. But you'd never get the sense she's only as vulnerable as she wants you to the character to be, if you see what I mean. Like she really does kind of yeah, the movie does kind of work because she's really good at the center of it, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so then of course eventually she the Ray Winston character is kind of a bit of a kind of condescending mansplainer, and they have a brief kind of relationship, but then she kind of uses him, and so it's very warts and all. There's no there's no real heroes and villains here, right?
Uh,
It's shades of grey, and yeah, they go on the tour, and there's Lawn Boy, Barry Ford from Reggae Band Merger, UK Reggae Band Merger. He's kind of like the tour manager guy,
mm,
right? And yeah, they go to all these kind of out of the way, they don't play any like big venues or anything like that. And yes, kind of the rise and fall, and then the rise again of um the Fabulous Danes, who suddenly turn into the Go-Go's at the end when
uh,
they have an MTV bit. Um,
oh yeah.
yeah, the ending a bit. I don't know. So I really like this film, as you can probably tell. I really dig this film. I think I really like it. It's very nuanced, and it's cool. It's well acted, and it's just yeah. It's just it feels very authentic to me.
Hmm.
Apart from maybe potentially two things, the ending where they become super famous on MTV. I don't mind it, but I know some people would have a problem with that kind of
Uh,
happy ending.
it well, I mean, it was obviously that's why Nancy Dowd took her name off the movie because of that ending. Isn't that the reason why?
Well, there's two. There's there's
Uh,
that, and the fact that she was groped on set by the camera operator.
oh, right. Okay.
Yes, kind of horrible, really. And apparently, she was like stood next to the camera, and the camera operator, leant over to like adjust something like the focus or something,
Mm.
and he thought it would be hilarious if he adjusted her nipple. So yeah, great,
Hilarious.
hilarious gag there. Um, so that, yeah, that was another reason as well. It was basically just sexism, right?
Uh, right.
And apparently the whole. I mean, you had like, yeah, yeah, hotel full of, and Steve Jones was like jonesing, oddly enough, because he was a methadone and heroin addict at the time, and he couldn't get his stuff, and everyone was trying to get into Diane Lane's pants, and it was
And she was 15, yeah, so
quite the well, in those days, I think even yeah. Anyway, um,
I
so
guess Diane Lane's gone on record as being like she was kind of traumatized by this whole kind of movie a little bit. So
oh really? Because she's
I think
she's
so.
she's on the commentary on the DVD and stuff, and she seems quite amused by
Oh,
the whole
really?
thing now. But
Oh, okay. Maybe at the time she was or something. I read something, but
it
um
should certainly have been a trial by fire, I think. But no, I was saying there was two bits that don't, again, they don't spoil the film, but they seem slightly out of place, I think, is the ending. And there's one bit where, so Christine Latty plays the aunt and the mother back at home, right?
right.
And they interview her on TV, and she has this whole monologue about, oh, I'm glad they've, you know, that seemed a little overly sentimental.
Which part?
The bit when Kristen Latty, the aunt, is interviewed on television,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
expected to say like, "Oh, that fucking girl is," but she's actually like gives this very heartfelt kind of.
Right, right, right,
I
right.
thought
Yeah.
that was again not a bad little scene in itself, and I understand why it's there and the kind of solidarity and all that. But it was nothing else in the film is that sentimental.
Yeah.
That's the only bit I think that's a little bit sentimental.
Right. Do
But
you think
still,
that was Nancy Dowd too, or that you think that was added in, or you think that was her?
I don't know. I can see it might have been her because I clearly, because that's the thing when you're dealing with sadly still to this day a little bit, right? When you're dealing with films which have a slightly kind of feminist perspective, the films have to do a lot. They have to juggle a lot, right?
Right.
There's a certain they can't just tell a story they want to tell. There's
Right.
a slight burden of kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like there's a burden of expectation that you live up to a certain standard, and rather than just tell the story, right? And
Mm.
I get that, I understand that, and by and large, this film manages to avoid it, apart from maybe that one scene. So it's not
Right.
a major problem. It's just that's what we're here to talk about, right? Is
Mhm.
take the film apart and put it all back together again. So it's worth
Right. Right. Right.
bringing up. Um, yeah, but other than that, I really like this. I'm watching it again. I was forgot to mention, it's called directed by Lou Adler,
Uh,
who'd made Up in Smoke before this,
uh,
right? We talked about because I almost
yeah.
chose
Yeah.
this film as a reaction to that before. Yeah, he was like, most famous as a music producer, right? He was the
Right.
Mamas and the Papas manager, I think.
Mm.
Talked about that when we talked about Up in Smoke. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Palestinians, I think is a really great little film, and I hope the cult of it kind of grows, which I think it has slowly over the past few years. Over to you, Ron. How did you get on with, ladies and gentlemen, the Fabulous Saints? Ladies and gentlemen, the Fabulous Ron
Uh,
will now speak.
I might I've changed my name to the skunk. Yeah, so
Yeah.
um oh yeah, I think I I appreciated I said you were saying about the nuance of the movie, and I appreciated the nuance of the movie, and I really liked, yeah, I can how do I say that? Yeah, I think the MTV ending was not good, and
Okay.
I think that it sort of ruined what momentum they had, right? Because I thought it was a really, really strong and satisfying choice to have them basically fall and be like go back to being nobodies at the end again,
Right.
right? Um, that whole thing about them like getting more and more popular, and then everyone wanting to be just like her, and they all like dye their hair. All the fans are all like dressing like her and
Hmm.
being like her, and I thought it was really like especially like today with there's sort of like this I don't know, like especially with like things like TikTok and YouTube and stuff, and there's this sort of like this like idol worship thing going on these days, with like especially like when we live in Japan, like all these people like like wanting to be exactly like that idol, and and stuff like that, everyone dressing like anime characters and shit like that, right? So I just find it like
Like
it
us.
was really, huh,
Like
like
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
On the weekend.
yeah, I dress like a thing. Um but
Pikachu. Pikachu, I think, would suit you.
Pikachu, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was gonna say the thing, but yeah, the big rock guy. Um,
Speaking of the thing, did you
hmm.
notice that the manager of the Looters was he's one of the people in the research station in the thing.
Oh, I didn't notice that. No,
Yeah,
okay,
David
okay.
Clennon. That's the only thing I recognized him from. I was like, how do I know that guy? Oh yeah, yeah. He's anyway.
Um, but yeah, so and then that ending where Ray Winston comes on and basically just like berates them for being kind of like posers, and like saying like, do you think that she cares about you? I mean, you're just like trying to be like her, and just she's just using them for your money and that kind of stuff, right? So he
Hmm,
basically like convinces them that what they're doing is dumb, right?
right, right.
And I think that I thought it was a little, I thought that was good, and I'm glad that they chose to kind of like turn on her
Hmm,
and kind of have that. Although I thought it happened a little bit fast and a little bit too viciously.
right,
I don't,
right.
usually
Yeah,
people who would do that type of thing would cling to their,
right, right.
dismiss, poor ideas a little longer than it was just sort of like like on a dime, and then they're all like, ah, I hate you. Kind of. So I thought that was it was a little too fast, but I'm glad it happened because
Hmm,
that was the way I wanted it to finish. And then when they just came back and then became Go-Go's, the Go-Go's, it was sort of like, oh, where'd that come from, right? So, and
Well, I
So
suppose that's one.
yeah,
That's one way you could. That's one way you
yeah,
could.
yeah.
You could. I can see that it's like, oh, it's a bit of a cop out happy ending. But I suppose on the other way, you could argue that it's even more deeply cynical, right? Because
Mm,
like those fans, they've been told once and they've
yeah.
fought back, and but then they've forgotten again, and they've
Right.
become fans. So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could argue that it's even more.
Or was that, I mean, again, their appearances had changed, so it was almost like that they had
Right.
sold out,
Yes, exactly.
right? You
Yeah,
have to do
yeah,
that, yeah. So
exactly
to do
right.
that,
Yeah,
okay. So
because originally when they're first on stage, they're more like that. They're more like the Shags or something like that. They're more than a punk band. They're just like,
well, I thought the movie was very kind of similar. It reminded me of I can't remember what was the title of the movie, the one that we did about Joan Jett. What was the one we
oh,
did
the
just
Runaways.
The Runaways? Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I thought
clearly the Runaways
yeah.
is part
It's
of the
like
DNA of this
it's like
estate. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I thought of. I was sort of equating it with that one. So
This is a much better film than that was, though.
yeah, so but I obviously this was sort of based on the Runaways in real life, I think, probably.
Oh, there's definitely part of that in there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
without
yeah.
a doubt. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean she seemed like a Joan Jett kind of character, except for
Right,
like the
right.
yeah, so um but yeah, so I thought it was yeah, it was yeah, so yeah, again, except for like those kind of like things that kind of stood out like a sore thumb. I thought it was yeah, it was a really interesting story. Um and yeah, I mean good for Diane Lane. I mean that's what you know she had a strong start, and you know Laura to see Laura Dern pop up when she's young too, you know,
I'm a
and
big fan of Laura Dern. I'm a big
yeah. Yeah, so I definitely, and it's great because now I can use Star Wars Episode 8 as my connective tissue for next episode.
not allowed to do that, Ron.
Gonna
If you check your contract,
hold on.
if you check your contract, which one is Star Wars Episode 8?
The Last Jedi is the worst one, actually. Yeah,
Oh, is that 8? Is it now? Okay,
yeah,
I haven't seen
yeah,
it. She in it, is she?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, General Holdo. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, or I could do first Jurassic Park, yeah, so
Well, that would be better, but but please don't.
yeah, yeah. But
Uh,
anyway, it was yeah, nice to see Laura Dern when she's young, and yeah, I don't know, it was just a fun movie. I thought it reminded me a lot of The Runaways, but yeah, it was obviously, as you said, a better movie, but
yeah,
um,
a bit more down to earth, right? And
more
yeah,
gritty and stuff
yeah,
like that. So
yeah.
and
Um,
yeah,
other people in this film as well. You got Black Randy and the Metro Squad, LA punk band kind of turn up. Elizabeth Daly is in it, who is now a very famous voiceover artist. Right? She's in like Valley Girl and stuff like that.
okay,
Future Scream Queen Debbie Rochon is in it when she's like fucking 12 years old or something. She's like one of the skunks.
okay.
Apparently Brent Spiner is in it, but
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
from
didn't
Star
see
Trek.
that. Yeah, so Nancy Dowd as well. It just I'm glad again we focus because we did Slapshot and then we focus in on her and then oh she wrote this and then she also wrote there's a really good crime film with Dustin Hoffman called Straight Time based on an Ed
Ah,
Bunker novel, which is excellent. I've almost chosen it before and I'm wondering it, but the thing is, I it's I can't. I'd be very surprised if I choose something other than Scum as my reaction to this because I really want to talk about Scum. Have you ever seen
okay.
Scum?
Through Ray Winston or
Yeah. Have
through
you ever
yeah,
seen Scum?
no.
Okay, okay, then that's
Is
on.
that that's not is that based on a Irvine Welsh novel?
No, no,
No, okay. That's filth. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we'll see. Maybe I'll choose something else. You never know. But it's the Scum, the power is difficult to kind of. I just kind of really want to see what you think of Scum, just because it's a very specific kind of British time and place kind of movie, and I'm wondering, um, how you get on with it. Anyway, there we go. Couple of crackers this time, then, Ron.
Not bad. Yeah.
Slaughterhouse-5 and ladies and gentlemen, the Fabulous Saints, one of the better double bills we've done, I think, over the years.
Yeah.
Uh, right. That's it then.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't
Yeah.
have much to be honest
Me
about.
and Ron
But
don't put out. So,
yeah.
yeah. Ah.